Hare Purport. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna-conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna-conscious man, one who has lost all inclination for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires, even up to the limit of liberation, or to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis, who after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, unless he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. Mukham karoti bhachalam mukham manayate girime pripadanam mande Shri Guru Niratarinam. There's a term which one finds used in modern philosophy and science, a matrix. So the term matrix in the dictionary, it sounds like a very complex word perhaps, but it's actually a very simple definition. Just like some objects of art are made by pouring something into a mold, like some liquefied metal, and it's poured into a mold, and the mold is of a certain shape, and then the substance hardens, and then you break the mold, and then you have a very nice statue. So that mold that is shaping the thing poured into it is called a matrix. Also, in more modern philosophy of the mind, matrix means a form or a pattern of our experiences. Just like we can speak of a human matrix of experiences. We can all discuss among ourselves common experiences that we're having. We all perceive that the ceiling here is a kind of blue color, and that there is a 5 bulb lamp hanging there with a lotus motif at the base. So we can all agree, I hope, that we're sharing the same matrix of experiences. So the Vaishnava understanding, our philosophy, is that this matrix of experience is actually formed by the demigods. What we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, this all makes up the matrix, and each one of these sensations or impressions is actually, we should say, the functional appearance of a demigod. Functional means by that function we experience, or we are relating with that demigod. We're not actually seeing the personal form of the demigod, but functionally we're experiencing his presence in our consciousness. And so these demigods they're actually shaping the matrix, the mold of our personality. Our personality is poured, just like liquid metal, into this mold of human experience. And that mold is fashioned by the demigods. And how do they fashion that? According to our karma, according to what we've done in the past. So as Krishna explains, actually he specifically explains this in Bhagavad-gītā, how according to karma, every living entity gains around him, around his mind, there is a certain eye, ear, tongue, and so on. So these are the demigods, fashioning our consciousness in that way. So this is this turns out to be a great problem in philosophy. That there is one person experiencing, but there are many things to experience. And as Krishna is explaining here, these things to experience, they flow. They're flowing into our consciousness like rivers flow into the sea. And Krishna is making the point that only one who is in transcendental consciousness cannot be disturbed by that. So for an ordinary person, you see, where do I begin and experience end? Or oppositely, where does experience end and I begin? That's a big, big problem for them. The reason being is that they're not sense-controlled, so therefore they're agitated. The matrix of the pattern of human experience is always causing us agitation. Raga, dvesha, as Lord Krishna explains in the Gita. Raga means my mind is being drawn, pulled, attracted to this, dvesha, my mind is being repelled by something else. And thus I am always roiling around inside of my matrix of experience, becoming attached to things. This is the false ego. I become attached, I identify with things in the matrix. I consider them to be myself. And as a matter of fact, it begins with this matrix itself. The body. Actually, we can say, instead of matrix, we can just say body. It makes it easier. But we want to just explain about these experiences. That's why I've introduced this term. But we can just make it easier and say body, gross and subtle body. So, because this is affecting our consciousness so much, because we are not controlled. Therefore, where does the self end and the body begin? That we don't know. Nobody knows that. Because people are thinking, I am my mind, I am my body, I am my house, I am my car. A false ego extends even outside of the immediate body to material things around. These things become myself. Now they're intimately bound up with my inner emotional state. So, Prabhupada gives that example, I'm sure you've all heard it. Driving in the car and a man is hit by another car in some intersection. And he jumps out and he's shouting at the other driver, "You hit me! You hit me!" Now the only thing that was hit was the car. But he's so much identifying with the car. He's saying, "You hit me." So this is the state of one whose senses and mind are not controlled, not in transcendental consciousness. He cannot actually discriminate where he, the one individual, begins and ends, and the experiences around him, the desires which are flowing into him, where they begin and end. He can't distinguish. And so this, as I said, this leads to big philosophical problems. And there are those philosophers who accent the individual, the one. These are monists. So they say everything reduces down to that one being, that one, of course it's no longer a person, they get done with it. It's an impersonal consciousness, because they identify the person with the matrix. So they want to strip away that matrix completely to liberate that one experiencer inside, that one knower. And so that knower, then he's all that's left. He is the absolute truth. And then there are others who say the many is the truth. The many different, here, the desires, the rivers flowing into the sea. Just like, give some examples in ancient Greek, very ancient, even they say this is pre-philosophical, the writings of Homer, Ulysses, and the Iliad. This is even before the great philosophers, the mythic era, the so-called mythological era of about 700 BC. So you find in Homer's writings, he was not a philosopher, but he was an epic poet. So you find when he speaks, he uses the term soul, psyche in Greek. But actually his conception of the self is not at all like we would think, a soul, one individual being experiencing the world. Not at all. For him, the soul is a conglomeration of different input, you see, and he actually analyzes it. So the soul is a collection of different kinds of impulses and desires which are coming in, and they all come in together, and they focus, and there's the self in the middle of it all. And you remove all those outside stimuli, and then there's nothing left. And this is, you find this in Buddhist philosophy. Buddhist philosophy speaks of 5, what they call skandhas, or 5 kinds of impressions. So the Atman is simply a conglomeration of 5 different kinds of impressions. You remove the skandhas, the impressions, and then there's nothing left. Anatma, there's no soul left. And in the modern world, there are similar conceptions of what is the self. Self is just, there's a type of modern philosophy called functionalism, which posits the self, this comes out of computer science. So input comes in, it's processed, and it's sent out. Input, processing, output. That's consciousness. See, so the self is just this, input coming in, processing, and something going out. That's the self. You remove the input, the output, there's no self, nothing. So you can see, these are the component parts of the problem. That there's one knower, and the jnani, and then there's the kshetra to use from the 13th chapter, the field of knowledge, which is many, many things. And so the philosophers, for thousands of years, they've worried about this, and some have taken one side, and some have taken the other side. But this verse is very, very important, because Lord Krishna is explaining both things. Yes, there is one, the person within who's experiencing this influx of so many desires. So Krishna is saying when he's Krishna conscious, then he's not disturbed by that. He doesn't talk about negation. He doesn't talk about any negation, about negating this input. He's speaking of a state of tranquility, pravishanti. That person, sashantim apnoti, sashantim. That person, shantim, peace, apnoti, achieves. Na kama kami, because he has no desires to fulfill. So the desires are coming. Again, these are the demigods. Now the demigods are the associates of Vishnu. They're his angas, his parts and parcels. Vishnu is in the heart. You're not going to get rid of Lord Vishnu. He's always there. So he's right next to the jiva. And because he's there, therefore these demigods are there, because they're his servants. So just as you're not going to be able to negate Lord Vishnu, sorry Lord Vishnu, now I'm a liberated soul, time for you to leave. My buddies are like that. Well, I've surpassed the need for even Vishnu, or even God, so you can just pack your bag and go, my dear Lord. No, he will always be there, because we are dependent upon him for everything. And because he will be there, and then his parts and parcels, the demigods, will be there. Now we're calling them demigods because we're referring to our present existence in this material creation. In the liberated state, in Vaikuntha, the Lord's energies, the same energies actually, they're still there. This is described in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma's vision of Vaikuntha. When he saw the Lord in Vaikuntha, then he said, it's described, he saw the 4, he saw the 16, he saw the 6. So what are these? The 4, the 16, the 5, the 6. What are these? The 4. This is Purusha, the soul, Prakriti, the material nature, Ahamkara, false ego, Mahatattva. And then you may think, well, wait a minute. That was a vision of Vaikuntha, right? It clearly says he saw the Lord on the throne in Vaikuntha Loka. So then what is? Okay, maybe we can understand Purusha, some souls will be there. But Prakriti, material nature, Ahamkara, Mahatattva. Yes, they're all there. They're all there because they're eternal associates and servants of the Lord. They are his Shaktis. So they're there, but they're in their original transcendental form. They're also there in the spiritual world, in the spiritual form, serving the Lord. The 16 are the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the 5 active senses, the 5 sense objects. They're all there. They're all there in the spiritual world. But in their original transcendental form. I was looking at a video yesterday, some speculation video, some scientist was making a presentation to the United Nations. And actually speculations were interesting because they could be connected to the Vedic scriptures in a way if you know our philosophy well enough. But he was talking about hyperdimensions. I found it very interesting. He was saying that actually this universe, and this is, we understand the fifth canto in this way, that the universe, like the planets that we see, you can see through the telescopes. Devotees sometimes worry about this, that scientists are seeing things one way through the telescope, but the fifth canto describes it completely differently. And it was interesting to me how this scientist himself was giving the answer to that problem, although I don't think he's ever read the fifth canto. But he was saying that what we can see of anything, but he was giving the example of the different planets like Mars and Jupiter. He's saying actually these are only shadows. It's only a shadow of a hyperdimension called hyperdimensional reality. That we're only seeing things in 3 dimensions, but reality actually exists in higher dimensions. He says mathematicians have calculated up to 26 dimensions. These are theoretical dimensions. And as far as, who knows, he's hypothesizing these dimensions can go on unlimitedly. And they do, because ultimately these are the energies of Krishna. The energies of Krishna are unlimited. So I found it very interesting that he's saying that actually the true form of things exists in higher dimension, beyond 3 dimensions. And this 3-dimensional platform which we can now see, in which we see Mars here and Jupiter there, and the solar system looking like this. This he actually used the term shadow. And I like that because that's the title of my book, Substance and Shadow. The same idea. He said these are shadows of higher dimensions. So it is not actually reality. So similarly, these what people experience as the flow of desires coming into their mind, agitating them, making them lusty, making them angry, making them greedy. If one can understand this in hyperdimensional terms, these are the demigods. And these are, and even higher, in the transcendental dimension, these are their Shaktis, the Shaktis of the Supreme Lord, Krishna himself, who are always there with him, serving him. So it's actually not a question of one versus many, which is how mundane philosophers try to solve this problem. Either take the one soul, the knower, and negate everything else, and then he's just floating in his own consciousness, you see, floating on the tranquil sea of his own undisturbed, mirror-like consciousness. With no object of consciousness at all, just floating, floating like what? Like a disembodied ghost. And that's not going to make anybody happy. Just to float in the sea of your own consciousness with no object at all. It's not going to make anyone very happy. On the other side, then the others who go for the many, the pluralists, they try to remove this oneself. That's the problem. That there's one guy that all these things are bumping into, and therefore he's breaking the harmony. He's breaking the harmony. So get rid of him, cross him out, negate this one. And let's just have many, the nature itself doing its thing harmoniously, mystically. No explanation is needed. Just let everything just flow along. Go with the flow, merge. You ultimately see how both of these philosophies just kind of make a loop and come to the same point, merging. That's why you see in this esoteric philosophy, they often have this symbol of the snake in a loop with its tail in its mouth. So, you can trace the snake this way or that way to the tail, which represents the material nature, to the head, which represents the self. But finally, the tail is in the mouth of the head, biting and feeling pain, and that pain is how you know you exist. This is the sum and substance of material philosophy. You see, you can't get rid of the nature, So whatever relationship you try to have with it, it's just biting your own tail, and that's how you know you exist. So anyway, they struggle with these absurd ideas for centuries and millennia, and never come to any conclusion. But here's the conclusion, very nice. Don't try to have the one without the many. Don't try to have the many without the one. Just surrender to Krishna. Just be Krishna's servant. And he'll take care of you, O one jiva in the heart. He'll take care of you very nicely. And he's Rishikesh, he will manage his energies, his many energies. And this is all done in terms of devotional service. So, it's very, of course, Bhagavad-gītā, this is Lord Krishna's own explanation of philosophy, so I was just going to say, this is a very brilliant explanation, but what can you say about Krishna's explanation? Of course it is brilliant, it is perfect. Perfect knowledge. So we should simply absorb this knowledge and establish it within our hearts and act upon it. Become free of all duality between of oneness and plurality. Hare Krishna. Any questions?
On one hand, we say that when the great soul is desireless, but here you describe more in terms of that desires are there flowing like rivers into the sea, but it never overflows. So what are those desires actually?
Yes, as I was speaking of, when one comes to the transcendental dimension, then one sees the senses, the mind, these sources of what now we experience as agitation. But the shapers of the matrix, one sees them as the Lord's eternal associates who are always engaged in his devotional service. So how can one see that when one himself becomes surrendered, willingly engaged in the Lord's devotional service? So one becomes another servant among the Lord's associates. So in this way, all desires are therefore flowing to the lotus feet of the Lord. All desires are directed Parama Purusha Maprasva Sukhatvam, as Jiva Goswami says. Parama Purusha Sukha Mapratva Sukhatvam, that's it. That for a devotee, the pure servant of the Lord, what does desire mean? Or Sukha, what does happiness mean? It is the happiness of the Lord. So all desires are aimed at satisfying Krishna. And so that is why there is no agitation. The devotee in the heart of this body, he's using this body not like the materialist, not trying to satisfy himself. He's using this body to satisfy the Lord in the heart of this body, Paramatma, who is seated within the heart as a king sits on the throne. So one who uses the mind and senses in the service of this king, the Lord in the heart. Desire is there, but that desire is all for the satisfaction of Krishna. And that is how this Krishna consciousness movement, I was thinking today about Srila Prabhupada, how he started his movement from nothing. Someone was from a very distressed land where the economy is completely ruined, was writing a letter, if it's all right, if devotees can work, can get jobs. And I said, yes, if things are so disturbed in your country, then we can just think of Srila Prabhupada beginning this movement in New York in 1965, 66. In those days, because there was no, like we have now, ISKCON, with restaurants and with businesses and so much economic facility, all within our own devotional camp. So there was none of that. So Prabhupada had some of his disciples work jobs outside. So So a devotee, he can do this, he can do anything, but it is all for Krishna. There's no disturbance. But as soon as we do things for ourselves, for our own motivations, then immediately the agitation infects us, lust infects us. Okay? Anything else? Smith?
Maybe it doesn't really fit to this topic we were talking about, but I would like to ask about Mahavishnu. As far as I understand, he is lying there eternally. So, can one speculate on that? What is he doing after or before? Or
what?
Can one speculate about what is he doing before or after, or he's just laying there? So
he's God. One of the definitions of God is he has nothing to do. So in that form, Lord Krishna is sleeping eternally, showing you what God is. There are people who try to imitate God in that way. They would also like to just sleep eternally. Some people like to stay in bed as long as they can. See, if they have money enough, they don't have to work, and they're otherwise bored with life. And then they just, actually that's how they express their independence, their mastery over everything. They just sleep. That's how their false ego is manifest. I just lay in bed as long as I want. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But because they're not God, they do have to get up. They cannot just stay in bed 24 hours a day. They do have to get up. And then their senses take over and engage them in sinful activities, and then after a few hours they come lurching back to the bed, completely exhausted and intoxicated, and fall back into it and lay there for another 18 hours. So they're not able to prove that they're God in this way. But the Lord in his Mahavishnu form, he's showing, I'm God. I have nothing to do, so I can just sleep in Yoga Nidra eternally. But his sleeping is not like ours at all, because he breathes out universes. Prabhupada says his dreams are the activities within all those universes. So everything the Lord does is full of amazing potency. When we sleep, we just create bacteria, bad smells. Okay.
I had a little one. I was thinking about this lecture that you saw on the video. How is the research going between to prove the fifth count of this multidimensional reality which is presented there and what we are seeing today? To present for the scientific world, one has to find a relationship or some frames to make it understandable. How is the research going in that direction?
I don't know.
You don't know?
That's something to...
Yeah.
Gil Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.